This video is for instructional purposes only and does not constitute an endorsement of any specific product or company by the Mine Safety and Health Administration, MSHA, or the U.S. Department of Labor. MSHA is grateful for the cooperation, assistance, and participation provided by operators and miners in the making of this program. This video focuses on training requirements and best safety practices for dredging operations that extract and process sand and gravel. Dredging is an aggregate mining activity, an operation usually carried out at least partly underwater, with the purpose of extracting material from the bottom and then sending it to shore by pipelines or pontoon-mounted conveyor belts. There, it is separated and processed. The mined aggregates are used for many things, including building and road construction, concrete production, landscaping, glass manufacturing, sand casting for iron and steel foundries, snow and ice control, and petroleum extraction. The most commonly dredged materials are sand and gravel and are mined by various types of dredges. The three most common types used in the industry are suction or cutter head, clamshell, and bucket wheel dredges. You will see these three types of dredges shown throughout this program. Each method of dredging and transporting material ashore is different and requires safe work procedures, thorough examinations, and mandated training under the 30 CFR. Since dredging operations pose unique hazards, hazard recognition is essential to maintaining safe working conditions on or around dredges. It is critically important that we know how to identify and mitigate hazards on or around dredging operations. Now, let's take a closer look at some of the more common hazards, including drowning, slips and falls, electrocution, working around high-pressure pumps and pipes, welding and cutting hazards, fires, materials handling hazards, pinch points, cables or wire ropes, environmental hazards such as high winds, lightning, and fog. Statistics show that drownings have accounted for the majority of fatalities at dredging operations. But an even more alarming statistic shows that the majority of the drowning victims were not wearing any type of personal flotation device. These deaths were preventable. Federal regulations state that life jackets or belts shall be worn where there is a danger of falling into water. This includes working on or around dredges, workboats, rock barges, floating conveyors, and pump stations.
Dredges are unique pieces of equipment to the mining industry compared to most surface operations because they do operate on the water. The floating nature of the dredges puts unique demands on safety for the miner.
At Martin Marietta, we require our people while working around water to wear personal flotation devices. And we offer many different types. A couple of them are the self-inflatable that can also be used manually by pulling on this cord. It also enables the device to help somebody, if they're unconscious, to hold their head up. And then we have the more traditional type that are also used by those that prefer them.
The different types of life jackets varies with the job that you're going to do. We've bought some life jackets that were specifically designed for a welder. A welder can't close his hood down when he has a typical work vest on, and they're also not fireproof. So we've supplied our welder with a fireproof life jacket and also has an open V-neck collar so that his helmet can completely close down. The other work vests are designed specifically to keep a man afloat. However, if the worker is unconscious or falls and hits his head and is knocked unconscious as he's falling in, those particular life jackets will not keep his head above water.
Not only do we require that, the PPE with the high vis and steel-toed and hard hats and so on and so forth, my guys are required, and this is where we take it one step above MSHA, is we require our guys to wear PFDs all the time. We feel it's safer as an operation to have it on all the time. And it makes them feel comfortable, and it's there for just in case. And that's, hopefully it never happens, but it's there, and that's why we require it.
Dredge fatality reports show over and over that the majority of drownings are due to not wearing a life jacket or personal flotation device. Dredges can pose many slipping and tripping hazards. Loose materials, uneven walking surfaces, adverse weather conditions, and frequent mounting and dismounting of equipment make miners on dredges vulnerable to slips and falls. Snow, ice, and freezing rain can make surfaces very slippery. Wear shoes or boots with non-slip soles. Be careful while walking. Other slipping and tripping hazards could include oil, grease, water, ice, and loose sand and gravel or other material on metal decks. Cables and unsecured lines are also tripping hazards. A high number of lost time accidents are the result of falling and are caused by slipping or tripping over an object left in the walkways and travelways. Many falls are caused by obvious hazards, spills on walkways, tools and equipment not put away, loose ladder rungs, debris on the ground or walkways, and uneven walking surfaces. Good housekeeping procedures can help reduce hazards by keeping decks clean and free of debris, tools, and other materials. Electricity and water don't mix. People need to be especially careful around electrical installations on dredges. Providing and maintaining good insulation and grounding, as well as locking out and tagging out before doing any electrical work, are extremely important. Floating cables and power cables carried on pipelines must be properly insulated, adequately protected, and frequently inspected. Mechanical bonding and grounding must be maintained. Dredges with onboard power plants differ from those with shore power because, in most cases, the vessel's hull is used as a neutral or ground return. Employees unfamiliar with marine electrical circuitry should not be allowed to work on this equipment. Inspection and cover plates on electrical equipment and junction boxes shall be kept in place at all times, except during testing or repairs. Principal power switches shall be labeled to show which units they control, unless identification can be made readily by location. Light bulbs that prevent shock or burn hazards must be guarded. Weatherproof lamp sockets must be used in wet conditions or where exposed to weather. Temporary lights should be guarded, equipped with heavy-duty cords, and properly grounded. Regulations state suitable danger signs shall be posted at all major electrical installations. Dredge fires are extremely dangerous. Good housekeeping can help reduce the danger of fire. Examples of this include keeping oil, grease, waste rags, and other flammable or combustible materials in covered containers away from potential ignition sources. Storing paints, thinners, and solvents in fire-resistant cabinets. Checking for fire after any welding or cutting operations. Properly inspected fire extinguishers should be readily available, and all employees should know how to use them and should also be trained in other fire suppression techniques. Readily visible signs prohibiting smoking and open flames shall be posted where a fire or explosion hazard exists. Follow normal welding and cutting safety procedures while working on dredges. Objects to be welded should be tested to determine if water, flammable liquids, or vapors are present because they could explode when heated. Use hoists or get help to handle heavy objects. Rigging may contain pinch points and should only be done by experienced people. Clamshell dredges may have a very dangerous point between the cab and the deck as the machine swings. Inboard guardrails should be used to guard the swing radius at the rear of the machine. Remember, the dredge operator probably can't see around the machine. High-pressure pipes and pumps are another safety hazard found on a dredge. If dredging pumps are started while employees are walking on pipeline-mounted walkways or working from floating pipe, sudden movement of the pipe may cause falls. High-pressure pipes and pumps should be isolated and bled off before any work is performed on them. Flammable or toxic materials in the system should either be purged or rendered inert. The system should be secured and locked out and should be tagged until such work is completed. Cable or wire rope breakage is another mechanical hazard on dredges. Broken cables can whip or backlash violently, often with disastrous results. Regular inspection and replacement of worn or damaged rope and maintenance of cable, drum, or shiv guards can help reduce the risk of injury if a wire rope does break. High winds and lightning are also potential safety hazards. Gusty winds can create unstable work platforms, and fog can cause zero visibility.
Yeah, with the fact that everything we have here is electric, including the dredge, we have to worry about our storms. We got a lot of lightning storms, thunderstorms, heavy rain. Heavy rain affects the material coming up the belt a lot. So you have to make sure that you're prepared for that. We watch the weather, we keep an eye on it. Plus we also have the fog in the morning, which you sometimes can see 20 feet, sometimes you can't see at all. So we have to adjust to that. All our trucks, pickup trucks, the low profile vehicles have a yellow beacon light, and they're required to have that on in the evenings especially, or during the fog days, so that somebody can see something flashing, and pick up that something might be moving, and they need to keep an eye out for it if it's coming toward them, going away from them. Thunderstorms come in, we have to adjust. We may have to pick the dredge up and not pump material because we have a pipeline that's roughly 800 feet long. And if it goes down in the middle of that, it could be packed full, and then we have other issues trying to get it cleaned out and back up and running. So the easiest thing to do is just pump water. Storms last 15, 20 minutes. After it's gone by, we feel comfortable, put it back down in and get back into operation.
Another thing that we pay attention to is the weather out here. High winds can be a problem. They can be dangerous. Even a thunderstorm moving in can be a danger. So you have to pay attention to your local weather forecast. You want to know that if there's storms coming in, that you should be prepared for them. Wind can do a lot of damage out here, and anybody that's caught out here in the wind can get caught in a bad situation. So we keep our anchor lines snugged up tight to keep the dredge from slapping back and forth. We've also added some storm ropes to our conveyors so that they're not all jackknifed up. We keep them under control. We'll call ahead and warn the operators if bad weather is approaching so that they can stop running the machines and either stay inside the cab or can evacuate the piece of equipment and get off of it before the storms arrive so that they don't get caught out in the middle of it.
Now, let's look at requirements for examining the workplace, the place where personnel perform their job duties and travel. Thorough and complete workplace examinations are required for dredging operations. Workplace examinations are an invaluable, vital tool to ensure the safety of personnel who work on or around dredges. An effective safety program involves effective workplace examinations. This will help the operator to identify hazardous conditions and eliminate, mitigate, or correct hazardous conditions in a timely manner. Workplace examinations are conducted where personnel work and travel, including areas where work is performed on an infrequent basis, such as areas accessed primarily during periods of maintenance or cleanup. All such working places must be examined by a competent person.
Daily workplace exam and hazard recognition is a key component of our success. Each shift is required to do a workplace exam, and if hazards are found, they're required to either correct them immediately, and if that's not possible, they will danger hazard off the area and convey that to management in written form and verbal per shift change. So that's a key component to maintaining safety on a day-to-day basis is our workplace exams.
The workplace examination, of course, is the first thing that the operator does as they arrive on site, basically performing a general overview of the dredge as they're coming over on a workboat, looking at the platform, looking for anything unusual just from an overall distance. Once upon the boat and the launch is secured, the operator looks and visually inspects his walkways, pathways, and then begins his overview of the whole area. Enters into his working compartments and areas, makes sure that everything's in place, that there's nothing out of place, nothing unusual. Just is there anything that looks different, change, any smells, any fluids, anything that might alert them that a condition has changed since the last time he's entered that work area.
So as you're looking at the dredge, you're going to take a look at the pontoons and make sure that it's setting level in the water. If it's listing to one side or the other or leaning, you need to find out why. It could be that you might have just left some material in the hopper from the night before. So you're going to take all that into consideration, but you mainly want to make sure that none of the pontoons have taken on water. Okay, so if you were to notice, say, like maybe you had a windstorm the night before and there's some wind damage from maybe some of the wires got cut or wires got frayed, you would obviously want to shut the dredge down immediately, kill the power to it, and then contact the correct contractors to come out and do the repairs.
Our policy here is if we find anything, which is an excellent policy, if we find anything, we want to address that right then and there. Again, with us, safety is first and foremost. So we address it immediately, and then we proceed to run the operation.
Personnel in the active workplace need to know when conveyors are starting up. Also, operators of dredging equipment need to have radio and/or telephone communication. When starting the conveyor system, where the entire length of the conveyor is visible from the starting switch, the operator must visually check to make sure persons are clear before startup. When the entire length of the conveyor is not visible by the operator, a system which provides visible or audible warning shall be installed and operated to warn people that the conveyor will be started. For any kind of equipment maintenance, follow established lockout and tagout procedures before working on systems or moving machine parts. All dredge sites should have a copy of the operation and maintenance manual for operator access. This manual should include copies of any job hazard analysis, JHA, pertinent to dredge maintenance. Workboats serve several important functions in the dredging industry. They are used as a work platform for servicing pipelines, cables, and the dredge itself. The workboat is also commonly used for transporting miners and materials to and from the dredge. There are many hazards involved with operating a workboat, which have the potential to cause life-threatening injuries. The workboat is a workplace, and it must be examined for hazards also. Accidents and fatalities have occurred on workboats at dredging operations. Here are some of the best practices for workboats at dredge sites. All personnel must wear a life jacket. Workboats must be in good operating condition and well maintained at all times. A paddle must be available in the event of an engine failure. Provide adequate lighting at the ramp and in the boat at all times. Secure and balance loads prior to operation. Provide safe workboat access from the shore and to the dredge.
One of the challenges, obviously, is transportation to and from the work site. With a dredge operation, certainly that is much different than a ground-based or a land-based operation. We have to make sure that we do our proper pre-shift inspections, make sure that we have the proper personal protective equipment available, and life jackets, something that we wouldn't use on a land-based operation. That is something that we need to make sure that we have those available and that they're functional.
Maintaining a boat isn't something you can just look under the hood and see the wheels, because there isn't any. So you have to make sure that there's no water being taken on or any issues with that. Then you take it as a competent operator or somebody that knows how to operate it, because it's not just a what I would say a little speedboat. You can't just jump in and take off. You got to understand how it works, how to get to A and B. Then we get out to the dredge. You get it tied off safely and up again the dredge, so to speak, and then you access the dredge, making sure that it does move. So there are going to be some in and outs. It's going to drift further apart. You want to make sure that when you're making that step, you're in tight. If you have to hold on to something, pull the boat in, then get onto the dredge, and then go from there.
Safe access is an extremely important topic for dredge safety. All personnel who work on or around dredges must be provided a safe means of access to all areas where they work and travel. Transfer points, conveyor crossovers, elevated walkways, elevated ramps, stairways must all be of substantial construction, provided with handrails, and maintained in good condition. Tow boards must be provided where necessary. All fixed ladders must be of substantial construction and maintained in good condition also. Railings, barriers, or covers must be in place to protect openings above, below, or near travelways through which persons or materials may fall. Manhole covers should be secured at all times and clearly marked. Make sure covers are secure in the event the dredge takes on water. Wherever employees are required to walk alongside elevated conveyor belts, outboard railings must be provided along the walkways. Also, inclined, railed walkways have to be non-skid or provided with cleats. In some cases, it may be better to have stairs instead of ladders. Some workplaces may have areas that have restricted clearance. A restricted clearance must be clearly marked if it creates a hazard for a person working or traveling. Illumination sufficient to provide safe working conditions shall be provided in and on all surface structures, paths, walkways, stairways, switch panels, loading and dumping sites, and work areas.
What we wanted to do was ensure that we had safe access for our employees to be able to work on these machines and maintain them and limit their exposures and their hazards. So we added stairs and work platforms around our screen decks. We've added extended reach grease hoses on the head pulleys and tail pulleys so that they didn't have to get out on the water to grease a tail pulley bearing or get out in a dangerous place where they might fall in the water. So we've added grease hoses where they can grease the bearings and safely from a safe location inside the walkway.
Always provide and maintain guarding sufficient to prevent personnel from coming into contact with moving machine parts. All moving machine parts must be guarded to protect people from coming into contact with gears, sprockets, chains, drive, head, tail, and take-up pulleys, flywheels, couplings, shafts, fan blades, and similar moving parts that can cause injury. Ensure the construction, installation, and maintenance of high-quality, effective guards are installed to provide the required protection. Thorough workplace examinations, identifying and correcting hazards, is a big part of ensuring a safe workplace. But we also need to be prepared in the event of an injury or an emergency at the dredging operation. Federal regulations require that an individual capable of providing first aid shall be available on all shifts. The individual must have current training and have the skills to perform patient assessment and artificial respiration, control bleeding, and also be able to treat shock, wounds, burns, and musculoskeletal injuries. First aid training must be made available to all interested miners who work at the operation. Adequate first aid materials, including stretchers and blankets, must be provided at places convenient to all working areas, and that water or neutralizing agents shall be available where corrosive chemicals or other harmful substances are stored, handled, or used. When employees are working at the dredging operation, a competent person designated by the mine operator shall be in attendance to take charge in case of an emergency. A suitable communication system shall be provided to obtain assistance in the event of emergency. Emergency telephone numbers must be posted at appropriate telephones.
At our operations, we partner up typically with our local fire departments and our police departments, bring them in, give them tours of the facility. In case there is an emergency, they know exactly where they need to go. We have a particular plant that has a part of their operation that's very high, and so that local department knows that when we call them that they need to come on site right away with their higher ladder truck, so if there is an emergency or a rescue that is needed, that they're prepared as well. We do that in order to make sure that our people are safe at all times, and that if there is an emergency, that we have something in place, because at that time it's very stressful, and as long as we have all the numbers in place and the people know where they need to be, it makes the environment a lot more safe for our miners.
If there is an accident, how do we address that? How do we make sure that the first responders understand as they're coming onto our site that this may be a water rescue operation? And so one of the things as an association, we're working with the first responders to make sure that they understand that if they come onto our site, they get a call from one of our dredge operation sites, make sure that they bring their boats, make sure they bring their water rescue equipment.
No employee shall be assigned or allowed or required to perform work alone in an area where hazardous conditions exist that would endanger his or her safety unless he or she can communicate with others, can be heard, or can be seen. Personnel who work on dredges, like all aggregate miners, need to know how to perform their jobs safely. And they need to know how to recognize and control hazards in their workplaces. Effective training is essential to protect the health and safety of miners. Training requirements for miners working at dredging operations, regardless of size, are covered under 30 CFR Part 46.
Training is the largest part that we do with new miners, and then as our refreshing on a yearly basis. But we depend heavily on the experienced miners here to convey their knowledge and experience to the new miners, and then they're kind of the big brother. They look out for the new guy, and also they're the eyes and ears for management, and we're able to take that experience and build on it and implement procedures to make it safer for everybody out here. So we depend heavily on that.
The new miners come in and we do approximately 3 to 4 hours worth of HR, learning their policies that we have within the company, what they're allowed to do in terms of the ethics, etc. They do their insurance stuff, we get through that, so we thoroughly go over that so if they have questions we can answer them. and not have to worry about them making phone calls and trying to track down the information. Then upon completion of that, I'll sit down with the employee, look at some maps, show them the general location of the areas that we are, where we're sitting, where the office compared to the plant, the dredge, which we sit on approximately 1,000 acres. And then we'll do a plant tour in my truck, and we drive around for approximately 2 hours, and we will get out, talk to different employees at different positions that are at, what's going on, what they're working on, what they might need to do.
Employees working out here on this dredge must be trained on how to do each and every specific task that they do. If they're greasing a bearing, they need to know how to grease it. They're going to look for grease spilling out. If they see smoke, we're going to make sure that grease is getting to the bearing. If we're greasing a bearing through an extended reach grease hose and we see grease spilling on the deck, we know that grease is not getting the bearing, so we're going to start looking. That's how we're going to train him, to look to make sure that he sees grease going to that bearing.
Let's summarize the requirements and best practices for dredge safety. Conduct thorough workplace examinations and report and correct any and all hazards. All personnel must be provided a safe means of access to all areas where they work and travel. Approved personal flotation devices, PFDs, including conventional life jackets or self-inflating PFDs, can save lives. Wear them. Federal regulations state that life jackets or belts shall be worn where there is a danger of falling into water. Always use proper PPE. Remove snow and ice from work areas. Maintain 3 points of contact. Provide reliable radio and telephonic communication devices for personnel. Establish procedures requiring persons to alert coworkers when they are outside the dredge's handrails. Watch out for each other. Always conduct safety meetings and encourage all personnel to recognize and work to mitigate hazards.